things. The first being, it's a very normal process for my clients to take sometimes 2, 3, and sometimes even 4 sessions to find and get comfortable using the proper equipment for their dog. I will start with maybe, depending on how I feel the client is in the process, how, I don't know, amicable to suggestions they'll be, and whether or not the dog is has bit anyone. Like, that's kind of a determining factor. I will kind of start with something like a leather slip, or just a general rope slip lead, because in 70% of cases, that's all you really need. But for dogs who are less physically sensitive, as in more physically dull or numb acting, stronger muscle, more sag skin, puppy excess skin, all that kind of a thing, who really are kind of like dull to pain, or any sensation, especially when they're focused or in the zone, then usually the right fit of a prong collar or the right fit of a gentle leader is a better fit, depending on the dog, depending on a couple different factors. So that's the direction I take about half of the time. So if in 70% of the cases, about 50% of those end up with with one or the other. And sometimes this is the route I take. Like, lesson 1, we'll try the slip, then we'll try this, then we'll try that. But sometimes at lesson 1, it's very evident to me, boom, you're going to need the prong, you're going to need a slip as a as second containment, as basically like a backup. And then, you're going to need to use the prong all day. Now, the purpose of leaving the prong on during the day when they're supervised in the house is like having an extension of your arm. It's like having a way to say to your dog, no, not that behavior, and yes, this behavior, because the prong is it's a corrective collar only. So when it's on and it's fitted properly, they don't feel like they're getting corrected. It's simply just there, kind of like a tag on your shirt. It's there, it's a little bit itchy, and it's something to get used to, but it's not a corrective collar that's constantly correcting them. It's only correcting them when it's utilized. So, it makes sense for dogs who are less physically sensitive, or who are tougher, thicker, meatier, extra skin, extra whatever, that if they need the prong on the walk, they probably also need the prong all day during the day. Now, ultimately, what is the goal? The goal ultimately would be to have any dog be well behaved and respectful of any equipment that you use, and ultimately get on a flat buckle collar and loose leash walk just like a princess or prince, and be perfect with that. Now, can that be the end result of every dog? Usually, yes, but in some cases, dogs just have to stay on the prong for a long time, and in most of the cases, the issue is not a matter of the dog. It's actually that the clients get really happy with their dog's behavior once they are listening to them with the prong well enough that they kind of don't really take those extra fine-tuned steps process to go from the prong to the flat buckle collar, because it kind of takes some intermediate and advanced steps of obedience to get there. And for the most part, if your dog's listening well with the equipment you have, it's like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And that's totally understandable. So I really don't talk too much about the process of moving from the equipment to, but everyone always asks, how long will my dog have to be on the prong collar for? And I tell them it's like training wheels, until they learn to balance themselves. But that depends on their acceptance of your verbal no, and your verbal no being equivalent in their mind to getting a prong correction, and their body responding the same way. So once their body is responding the same way as though you corrected them when you say no, which comes through intentional pairing at each step of the way, pairing of the word no with the correction, then you can start to experiment with not giving them any corrections with the collar, instead just using your voice. Once you have them listening to just your voice, that is, and in all settings and circumstances, that is when you can transition then to the flat buckle collar. Or you can use an e-collar if you want to transition them to off leash. There's a lot of options, and e-collars have many purposes. They can be a corrective collar or a commanding collar, used like a clicker in terms of association. So you can teach the dog like, hey dog, sit, click. And so when they hear the noise or they have the vibration, they know that they need to follow through on the command you gave them. Or it can be sit and they don't, and you say no, and they hear the noise, vibration, shock, whatever, and they know, oh, that was a correction. So they can have like two routes you can take with e-collars. And I do use them when clients buy them and want to use them, but there are, you know, some situations in which they'll be a better fit for different dogs than others. So I do advise accordingly. I wanted to kind of mention though why I'm talking about equipment. I'm not equipment focused. I'm different than other trainers in this regard. What I find with other trainers is that they will get really familiar, comfortable, and knowledgeable about one type of equipment, the use of it, and they'll kind of just try to use that equipment with all dogs in all circumstances at all times. And that can freak a lot of clients out and turn a lot of clients away. And I've had so many clients who have signed on with me and they said, you know, the trainer we talked to before you, like, gave us this chain or gave us this prong or told us they'll use the shock collar or whatever, and that's all they were going to do, and we were freaked out by it because that trainer is too heavily focused on their specific method with their specific piece of equipment the exact way and kind of fitting the dog into their cookie cutter mindset. Now the difference between me and them is probably a little bit of finesse and probably a little bit of just knowledge about all of the equipment and each use and each the timing necessary for it, the placement of it. In other words, if you have, let's say you have a very high energy but very physically sensitive younger, like smaller puppy that, you know, honestly just needs guidance, clear yes and no, but they're not going to need a prong because they're too physically sensitive. Well, knowing how and when and how to coach the owner and how to use a slip lead in that case is going to be the best fit. But if the dog's already bit somebody, you know, and then the dog's like aggressive, like, you can still get away with using the slip collar, but you have to teach the owner like how to do what with their hands and when and why not, so that they don't get bit. And so there may be cases where it may be a sensitive dog, but if it's bit someone, a prong may be necessary in order just to clearly communicate yes, no to it. You know, and then sometimes with aggressive dogs, prongs are not the way. So it's, you know, it just really is very tailor fit process in my personal opinion and experience of the last 20 years. So, you know, that's why you see Cesar Millan use slip collars for like every dog. And then if you ever pay attention closely to sometimes he'll have like another trainer work with them locally, and kind of he'll do like big follow-ups with them and kind of see the big process but not do the smaller process, especially in his Better Dog, Better Human series, the more recent one that's on Disney Plus. And you'll see maybe the owner is now using like a gentle leader or they're using a prong, and that's because whatever local trainer is working with them is working with that owner to train the owner to use the equipment that works for them and that's effective. And, you know, Cesar Millan can get away with using a slip collar and a slip makeshift halty slip with any dog because in part, and this is not the whole picture, but in part, he's a very, very built man and very strong. So he can honestly overpower any dog physically just from, you know, that position. But also, like, he just knows how to assess the whole dog's whole body language and communicate through his body language exactly what he wants the dog to do, regardless of equipment, regardless of equipment. And that is not a skill that owners can just take on in a day. So what you see Caesar do versus what you see the owners do is different. And a little bit of my bridging the gap is trying to coach owners to do what they need to do with the equipment so that they're not leaning too heavily on the equipment, but they also learn how to manage their body language, their energy, and communicate with their dog. Because if you have the dog respect the equipment but not you, then that's only half of the picture. I hope this makes sense and is resonating with someone or anyone because I don't talk about this a lot, but I think about it a lot, how I'm different from other trainers. And I don't really think about other trainers a lot because I don't consider them to be competition. I never have. When I was 16, hey Derek, good to see you. When I was 16, I called every trainer on Animal Behavior College's listing in Florida to ask them about the program, if they enjoyed it, blah, 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 but also just to find out about what they did with training. And what I found was that there weren't really other trainers calling other trainers like asking, hey, what do you do, how do you do it, how if you serve clients in this area and I serve clients in this area, can I refer people that I know in that area to you, whatever. And it's everyone's got their blinders on to everyone around them, kind of in an industry, which is fine, which everyone reserves the right to be that way. I've just never had a mindset like they're my competition. I view everyone else in my field as my educator, whether it be, okay, take that on and try that, or note to self, don't do that. Whatever the case may be, it's I'm always learning from my fellow peers. And I have students, dog training students, who have gone through Animal Behavior College's program with me and Joe Thor Dog Trainers Academy program with me, and I've tutored and mentored them through the process, and I've learned from them in turn. So it's such a interesting industry that if no one's doing your exact type of dog training or your exact method or seeing your exact type of client, like, it's really not a competition of an industry, in my humble opinion. So whatever, that's why I don't talk about it too much, I guess. I just don't like to be like them, me, like that's how, that's how it is. But so often clients pick me because I talk them through so much of the dog psychology, the body language, the way dogs think and all this before I'm like, here's the equipment, here's how we're going to use it, we're only doing this, we're only doing it this way. And because I'm super flexible and go with the flow about how the client wants to implement the equipment, I am, I kind of take my time with it. But I want to go back and give the caveat. If a dog has already bit someone, there's always a conversation to have up front with clients that I'm getting better at having, which is like, this is about people and not about your dog. This is about people come first. And so, we need to do whatever we need to do in order to get the dog to effectively listen from this moment forward to whoever's holding the leash, or to, whether you're holding the leash or not, to listen to the pack leaders in this household and to become a pack leader as quickly as you possibly can. So, this is about the safety of people. And so the equipment conversation, if you probably caught from the beginning, I was talking about the teeter-totter between the feelings of comfort that clients have of using a piece of equipment. Oh, that looks scary, or oh, this is, the feeling of comfort that they have, versus the level of frustration that they feel in terms of the results, right? So if you're using, like with Janice, we had the leather slip first and it just was not effective with her pup. So we ended up using prong, and now the prong is like the only thing she's using to really get her to listen. At least that's my last understanding. So, maybe I'll try something and then I'll try something else and I'll try something. But if if I'm working with a dog who's already bit, then we kind of need to go for um, like turn off the pipe, like if it's a water pipe that's leaking, like turn off the leaky pipe and then let's patch it. So first turning it off is like getting the right equipment, and patching it later may come, the feelings of being comfortable may come, but they may not. And with dog training, especially with any dog that has already damaged a person or another dog or another animal, they need to I totally lost my train of thought there, but sorry about that. It's gonna come back to me, I promise. Not only people come first, and that we need to hear this. We need to set our feelings aside, in training. And truly, if we're working with a puppy and it's never done any, wrong or damage, and we're just setting it up for success, like smooth sailing, it's the same way. We also need to set our emotions aside, because we're going to feel some kind of way about them whimpering and whining. We're going to feel some kind of way about them being more confined than would be socially, culturally expected, maybe, if we're setting them up for success. But we have strong feelings about it, and you kind of just have to take the emotion out of the process and go, I'm so glad that you love the prong, Janice, and that it's working for you. Obviously, it's a lot of people are understandably resistant to it at first because it looks so scary, and you think, oh my gosh, I would never put that on my neck. Well, good news is your neck is like 100 times thinner, and I would never put it on my neck either. Your neck is nothing like their neck. Their neck is like your thigh. And then putting a thick pair of pants on, and like then add some hair, so it doesn't feel anything like we would expect it to feel based on the look alone. And sometimes you have to see it and get comfortable with it to like believe me, but again, that's the balance, the teeter-totter between like comfortable with and frustrated with the results. And when you're working with a dog who's bit, dogs are very black and white. They don't understand yes, no, maybe, and they don't understand sometimes. They don't understand Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday you can do this, but not Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So if you don't have a clear black and white yes and no, and a way to communicate that with them, then they're going to find the cracks in the wall and push. They just are, because they need consistency. They need a strong leader. And if you're not going to be that, they're going to take over the role by default. Why? Because they need harmony established in the pack. And if you're not going to be the leader, they will. Not out of, begrudgingly. It's more out of necessity and instinct that takes over. And when it's a dog that doesn't want that role, it becomes a psychological burden, to the point of the dog becoming neurotic or all kinds of anxious. There's a lot of stress psychologically added to the dog in those cases. If it's a dog who wants to take over the role, well, is it safe for them to? Because if they take over that role, they're going to see themselves as perfectly within their right mind to give a correction to whomever they want to, whenever whomever does anything that they disagree with. Well, what's the context of having this dog? Is it a one-person owner, a one-person home, or is it with kids? Because if it's with kids and it sees itself as being able to correct, and correction is like a nip, well, now you have a dog who possibly will nip kids, and is that safe? That's up to you to decide.